If you think wizards should just automatically get stronger every level, you're probably not going to like this video. In my last DM mechanics video, I changed how wizards learn spells, and the comments were split. This video exists because of that one. However, if you do want to know how a spell creating system works, then you're in the right place. I had so many comments about it that I had to make my own custom spell research crafting system. A mechanic I was not intending to make because I had no interest in using, but because of the overwhelming comments asking for it, wondering how it would work, it got my brain thinking. And so I made that. Very happy to show you that today. We will be talking about that as well as many other things. So this is a part 2 of my wizard spell learning system. Like I said, this video exists because of the comments. Briefly, I'm going to list off some of the things that I saw pushback on. One comment saying that I'm fixing a problem that doesn't exist. I disagree. I tend to think I'm expanding to players that were looking for something like that for more realism for them, or adding and expanding on something that, yes, didn't exist, but giving more context to it. I have a little note here because I went through these. I saw many comments about their DMs not giving them enough access to spells to be able to even attempt a system like this, and that they think the system is cool and awesome and their DMs can't do it. And I got so frustrated reading that comment over and over again. You need better DMs. You need to have higher standards. You need to not just be okay with mediocrity. That's my opinion on it. I couldn't believe how many times I read a comment that kind of gave that same context. I'm sick of it. I'm sick of mediocre DMs, and I've seen the comment enough times that it's a lot. It's a lot to see. I also saw other comments about people. I will go through the end, so I will have a list of variant rules that I'll mention at the end of talking about this, but I'm going to mostly start with the ones that I thought deserved enough time and attention and merit, specifically the one where I researched and figured out how to make spell crafting work. There's going to be a cool little edit where you'll see a little drop down of that. Oh, that's right. This was important. I wanted to make a rules ratification to avoid abuse. I saw comments about this, and I don't know if people intended it this way, but I could see the danger. To avoid abuse, no one in the party of the wizard can teach them spells. Now, I talked to my DM friends, my uncle, about it, and there was kind of a back and forth, a devil's advocate, if you will. There is situations where you can, of course, give them that ability, but I would make it very special circumstances. And I would say for the normal party, for the normal type of players, meaning people that can and would abuse it or would just kind of make the whole point of the wizard learning spells in the world redundant, I would aim not to let the party be able to have that access, because then you have a situation where once you have a cleric, a sorcerer, a warlock, a druid, all of them, and a wizard's involved, now what's the point of having the wizard go get their spells out there in the world when they could just be hand-fed them by these classes that can pick spells for now and then swap those spells out and get new spells and now teach the wizard those spells too. Now, other people in the comments might say something like, they wouldn't do that because they wouldn't want to feel redundant, but maybe they would want the wizard to be able to cover them if they want to move away from a spell. So they would teach it to the wizard and then never pick that spell. But now the wizard knows it just in case sort of situation. I think it's something that needs to be put off the table and only used for special circumstances. Okay, the big one. I'm not even going to beat around the bush. I'm going to go into it. Also, for people that care, I did release a video, a short that did pretty well, and I saw some comments asking me to go into depth on my XP mechanics system for roleplay. Not this video, but I will. I am now getting a queue of things to remember to bring to people. Because another one I want to talk about is winter weather rules. I'm currently going to be playing in a campaign where I'm starting in winter time, and I'm trying to get better at using weather in the game, and it's a whole thing. I want to get better at that. So, here we go. Like I said, I was never going to do this, but I did it because of you guys. It is called the Wizard Spell Experimentation Rules. The core principles are pretty simple. My concept being that a wizard may experiment on a spell they already know to create a new distinct spell. Now that might seem confusing, it might not, might make sense right away. The successful experiment creates a new spell which must be recorded in the wizard's spellbook as normal. Right now, because of game balance, the wizard has to know the spell, and the spell is of a 5th level or lower. Higher levels should be at the DM's discretion. You should really think about that. The types of changes that could be made for the spell. You could do damage type, so changing a spell from like Burning Hands to Cold or Necrotic or Psychic. You could do the delivery method. So instead of touch, it becomes ranged, range becomes self, and so on. You could do the targeting, changing the target. So from single target to small area and so on. Duration. That one I think can get a little wonky, but I think it can be done in certain circumstances. So from instant to short. Effect emphasis. So if you want to have a spell that instead of doing the damage it does less damage, but you put a condition on now, and vice versa. Maybe you take a condition away, but up the damage, something like that. The important note here is that the experiment may not increase the total power. Power can only be shifted, not added. And each of these changes is going to give a different DC modifier that I'll get into in a second for how the spell, for how hard it is to work on the spell. Each of these changes will have a DC modifier. I'll mention that. Quick break. This channel is sponsored by us. If you want a real D&D experience, I run professional campaigns where your choices matter and your characters actually mean something. And if you're a DM, my Patreon breaks down the exact mechanics, systems, and encounter tools I use to make games cinematic and brutal in the best way. And if you play online, we make character tokens with visual health states. Full, wounded, bloodied, you get the idea. So combat tells a story at a glance. Links are below. Now back to the adventure. Research and cost time. Now I think this, for most tables, is going to make it balance really well anyway, because if you compare this with the copying spells list I have, that I think it scales really nicely. So I have experimentation cost. I have, this going from all the way from cantrip to 5th level, all the way from 100 gold pieces to 1,500 gold pieces, and taking all the way from 3 days to 6 weeks. The gold is spent and the time is spent regardless of success. However, success is determined by a single roll. It is essentially, the equation is the DC of the experiment. Starting base is 10 plus the spell level plus the modifier for the change you're looking to make. So if that doesn't make sense, like 10, if you do Burning Hands, level 1, plus 1. If I want to change Burning Hands from fire to ice, plus 1 again, so 12. That's the DC. And it is a Arcana check. The results, I have 3 different ones I like. We have success, fail, and then fail. If you fail by like 5 or more, catastrophic failure. That's when we're going to be rolling on a little experimental mishap table. So I just wanted to get that out there. I wanted to make this video for you guys because it had been a while since I did a DM mechanics video, and this is kind of like my part 2 to the first one. I will now get into the variations. I have a mixed opinion on the variations. I like the rules that I've written, and I'm one of those people that when I'm game designing, I'd like to have less rules than more so that playtesting and game breaking is easier to follow. Meaning if something breaks or if something stands out, like works or doesn't work, I can kind of point right to where and why. Whereas if there's too many variations, too many rules changes from the original structure, it's a lot more difficult to track that. So let's see, going with the first one. This was one thing I was going to add, and I actually changed. I made a previous recording of this video that I never sent out that was basically going to be me changing the classes that had access to it. Now, my opinion is this could work, but I'm going to slow down a little bit. The variation that for you guys you need to know is I was going to add Bard, Artificer, Eldritch Knight, and Arcane Trickster. Probably missing somebody. I don't know who I'm missing. Those were going to be my added classes to this structure, meaning they would apply to this. For Eldritch Knight and Arcane Trickster, they would still be limited to their style of magic they're already chosen for them. I think it's like Evocation and Illusion or Enchantment for the Arcane Trickster. But the Bard and Artificer would kind of like, this would apply. I'm not sure how that would work for the Bard. I understand that, they use music and everything, but in my opinion, even though they're charisma based, there's nothing that would stop them from having this work and should be applied to kind of help balance bards better, because I just think bards are broken. Anyway, moving on for that was my little thing. Other people had variant rules that I thought were very interesting. One I thought was worth putting in here was doing schools for the wizards, for the spells that they can just automatically learn. So for example, if you're a wizard who picks Evocation as your school, then as you level up, you may learn 2 spells from that school. It's something that I could see as being easy to add if you want to give the players a little bit of a softer time of their lack of access to just picking spells out of the ether. Then maybe you could go that route. One thing I saw a lot of pushback on that I disagree about, but I'm happy to talk about, wizards and healing spells. Now I saw pushback back in two methods. One side of it was talking about the divine or patrons and how basically we should exclude those types of spells from wizards because why should they be able to learn it? Because that's deity type magic or some powerful being type magic. I draw a hard line there because I believe that magic for clerics comes from their faith, and I think that magic for wizards comes from their intelligence. And as long as they are taught the spell, they can use that knowledge and their own magical ability to make the magic happen. I don't think that would, prevent them from learning the divine magic or devilish magic or whatever. The other group were more upset with the idea of wizards being able to cast healing spells for breaking game balance. For me, it's a little confusing hearing that because I just think that you should get better at game balance and you shouldn't have players using it. I don't see why that would really be the case, but for the sake of addressing it, if that is the case for your groups and that is something you're worried about, an easy variation would be just to get rid of all healing spells. I'm going to play devil's advocate. Bards have access to healing word. Plenty of spells out there, whether they're bards or druids or clerics or paladins, have some sort of temporary healing or healing component part of it. That's something that I feel like you would really be cutting a lot more spells than you think when it comes to that. Obviously spells like healing word or mass healing or cure wounds, like maybe you're just looking to cut those, and ones that are more like niche, like Goodberry, or I don't know if you would say bless, or is it aid? The one that gives like temporary hit points or temporarily raises the max hit points. I don't know how much you would want to go into that. That was a variation to mention. Another person mentioned to give wizards less spells in their spell book at the start of the campaign, which is an idea. That was one of the ones I wouldn't do for myself. Again, this is a recent rules system that I've created. I don't want to have too many things to keep track of that have changed. I think letting them start with their normal spell book is fine. I think you could start with less if you wanted a really realistic campaign and you were really planning to make the campaign more about the wizard's spell learning be the journey. Yeah. But I think if you want a normal campaign where they don't have to be front and center all the time, let them start with that solid amount of 6 spells. I think that's a great starting point. And then, every once in a while you could throw a spell in there, a spell scroll or a spell book, and it doesn't feel forced or too focused on. Oh, I did have one more frustration. I'll get to the frustration. The other variant was cantrips. Variant rule for cantrips. Basically being that when the wizard levels that they can learn 2 cantrips instead of spells, or that we just won't stop a wizard from learning cantrips. There are certain levels where a wizard would just get another cantrip that we let them do that because it's a cantrip. I don't see a problem with it. I don't know if I will add it. I guess it depends. For at least my characters in the games I'm playing, I don't really need to. I think there's plenty of opportunities to get spells out there. I don't feel a need to worry about it. The last thing I think that I was frustrated on, that I for some reason put in the back, was that I had tons of stupid comments in the video that wizards are OP and have access to all spells. And I appreciate the people that responded to them, basically trying to clarify that this was not giving wizards access to all spells if you actually understand what you're doing or what your DM's doing. It's just giving the chance to learn these spells. But it doesn't mean that every other class is redundant. It doesn't mean that everyone should play wizard or that everyone should be worried if they play cleric or druid or bard that the wizard's going to steal their thunder. All it does is give the wizard a more unique way to learn spells and a chance to learn spells at the DM's discretion. And again, if you're having, some standards and playing with DMs that are capable of using a system like this, then you shouldn't have to worry about some OP wizard because you could build some crazy thing that would make the wizard that way. And I don't even see their arguments, to be completely honest. I think that they were way over looking into it and exaggerating it, and I appreciate the people that had the common sense to point them in the right direction. So this system isn't for every table, but if you want magic to feel earned, risky, and tied to the world, this is how I run wizards. Thank you guys. Happy New Year's.